Baghdad says hundreds of civilians die in a raid on a bomb shelter. Washington says it was a military bunker, quote, "We hit the right target." And new diplomatic moves as preparations continue for a ground offensive. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting with a War Update edition. Good evening. In the air war against Iraq, the United States has used high-tech precision bombs to try to hit military targets and, insofar as is possible, avoid civilian casualties. Today, that same high technology may have led to the worst civilian losses of the war. Iraqi officials say hundreds of people were killed when 2 missiles destroyed a bomb shelter in a middle-class neighborhood of Baghdad. U.S. officials from the White House on down say the target was a military communications bunker. Reporters in Baghdad and photographs from the scene indicate that the victims may have included many women and children. Pictures of the Baghdad bombing include some graphic scenes of the reality of war. We caution you that some may not be suitable for children. CBS News correspondent Doug Tennell is monitoring the story from Amman, Jordan, and he begins our coverage.
Bombs rained on Baghdad for 12 hours overnight, and by dawn, the smoke was still billowing from the bunker. 2 direct hits had drilled through at least 9 feet of reinforced concrete and turned what was supposed to be a safe place into a fire pit. The Iraqis say more than 500 people were trapped by the fires in a number of underground rooms. Many people from the neighborhood had passed the nights of bombing in the shelter. There were many women, many children.
I was shocked that it was in a place like this. How would anybody think of striking a place like this?
The U.S. government says the shelter had been converted by Iraq's military into a command and control center. The facility was ringed by a high barbed wire fence, but Iraqi officials say only civilians died here. No doubt many did. A grief-stricken man came looking for members of his family today. Is this a military target, he said? Our families were killed. I can't find my daughter. Rescue workers brought out another stretcher and asked if this child was his. No, he said, this is not her. As pictures like these are broadcast around the Arab world, anti-American fervor is expected to increase.
Here in Jordan, the bombing in Baghdad today is seen as just one more reason to doubt American assurances about civilian casualties, one more reason to doubt President Bush, one more reason to believe Saddam Hussein.
Islamic fundamentalists in Amman called for an open revolt by Arab members of the coalition. Radio reports described the tragedy in Baghdad as a new massacre.
I think the United States people running this war are either liars or very stupid people. They may have smart bombs, but they don't have very smart minds.
If you are so accurate, if you really know what your weapons are doing, what destruction you're causing, who are you causing it to, what the hell are you doing, bombing all these kids and all these women?
For the first time since the war began, the riot police were called into the streets of Amman tonight as a crowd tried to march on the American embassy. These demonstrators say the shelter was not a legitimate military target. They are now more convinced than ever that killing civilians is part of the American war plan to destroy Iraq. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Amman.
President Bush had his spokesman try to keep the focus and the blame for any civilian casualties on Saddam Hussein. So did Defense Secretary Cheney. Both said the Baghdad bunker hit was a military target, that if civilians were inside, Saddam put them there. Our coverage of the American version of what happened begins with David Martin at the Pentagon.
The bombs were dropped by a stealth fighter, a pair of 2,000-pound laser-guided bombs specifically designed to penetrate the building's concrete roof. The fact that civilians were killed does not change the Pentagon's view that it was a legitimate military target.
We've gone back and checked very carefully on, and it was indeed a military facility, a hardened bunker, camouflage painted on top, plugged into his military communication system.
This was an air raid shelter in 1985, but then was upgraded. We talked to folks that had worked in the construction area that this one was upgraded to a hardened shelter used for command and control.
Pentagon briefers used drawings based on satellite photos to explain why they are so certain.
Even though the ceiling, or the top floor here, was some over 10 feet thick, they had reinforced that with metal. Big sheets of steel. We observed military vehicles, we observed leadership vehicles.
In addition to what they saw, Pentagon officials say they also heard military communications coming from the building. According to the Pentagon, the building had been activated as a command center after earlier strikes had destroyed the primary command centers in downtown Baghdad.
In the last 2 weeks, this one became a secure communications, command and communications facility. And so it was added to the target list.
Despite all that was known about this facility, intelligence officers did not detect the presence of civilians.
It's baffling to me as an American, and it hurts me deeply to see that apparently civilians were placed in this what is clearly a military facility.
But Pentagon officials insist the fault was not theirs, but Saddam Hussein.
And the notion that somehow this was a failure of U.S. intelligence, I just think is rubbish. It doesn't hold up. He ought to keep civilians out of military targets.
Cheney says he has more proof that Saddam is protecting military equipment by moving it to civilian areas, including one of the oldest archaeological sites in the world.
Recent satellite imagery obtained just this morning indicates that there are now 2 MiG-21s, combat aircraft of the Iraqi Air Force, parked right next to the pyramid.
If Saddam is trying to make U.S. commanders gun-shy, today's tragedy may have helped his cause. A senior military briefer told reporters, "We are going to examine our conscience very closely to determine if we can't do something to prevent this from happening again." David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
A White House increasingly fearful that it could lose this propaganda war today retaliated hard, claiming not only that Saddam Hussein was to blame for today's civilian deaths, but also that it's Saddam's behavior, not America's, that should be questioned. Spokesman Marlon Fitzwater launched a campaign to deflect attention from American bombs and focus on the pattern of Saddam's abuse. The misuse of prisoners forced to make propaganda, the use of human shields, military command centers placed on top of schools.
We do know that Saddam Hussein does not share our value in the sanctity of life. Indeed, he time and again has shown a willingness to sacrifice civilian lives and property that further his war aims.
To the world, however, these scenes look damning, and the White House knows it. The explanation that this was a military target may be understood in the West, but on the real battlefield of this propaganda war, the Arab world, the U.S. is in trouble.
In the Arab world, the fight over what is right and what was done will be much more emotional. People will not look at the evidence. They will look at the very graphic pictures of casualties, and we will have to see whether thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, will pour into the streets.
Another propaganda advantage for Saddam, reporters are in Baghdad to witness Iraq's loss of civilians, the very kind of access Saddam denied when his army rolled through Kuwait.
Well, this is another Saddam Hussein propaganda effort that some reporters inside Baghdad are trying to communicate to the world. But they should go inside Kuwait and see what he's been doing to my people for the last 6 months.
Still, White House aides are bracing for a propaganda disaster. The political fear here is not that there'll be any damage to America's reputation, but rather that there'll be increasing Arab pressure on the president to back away from an air campaign that he himself has described as essential to the safety of Americans. Dan?
Thank you, Wyatt. Coming up on the CBS Evening News, correspondents Anthony Mason and Bill Plant on the Soviet diplomatic dance with Saddam Hussein.
Potpourri! But we're more than just potpourri. I'm the only potpourri carpet deodorizer with genuine Arm & Hammer baking soda to absorb odors and freshen naturally.
And I'm the only air freshener with Arm & Hammer baking soda. The natural way to deodorize tough bathroom odors and make the air potpourri fresh.
I freshen the carpet.
And I freshen the air.
Natural freshness.
From the baking soda experts.
We bake pearls made of denture material in this blueberry pie to prove how powerfully Efferdent, America's leading denture cleanser, removes this tough stain, even in between. Efferdent, stronger than stains.
Mothers have learned from countless doctors and pharmacists to take care of coughs with Robitussin. And they've taken this advice home. Robitussin, recommended by Dr. Mom. Ask your doctor or pharmacist.
A lot of people can't wait until they retire. But I always liked my work. It worried me that when I turned 65, I'd have to leave. Rules are rules, and that was company policy. Then AARP helped get mandatory retirement eliminated. Now I can retire when I want to retire.
Bye, dear.
Not when someone else wants me to.
AARP, making a difference.
There was more jockeying for position in the post-war Middle East today, this time what sounded at least like a major move by Syria on the Arab-Israeli conflict. Tom Fenton in Israel has our report.
In Damascus today, German Foreign Minister Hans-Dietrich Genscher said Syria is ready to recognize Israel's right to exist. Later, a Syrian government statement said it is seeking a just and comprehensive peace in the Middle East. There was an immediate reaction from Israel.
Of course, it's a welcome change, but a long overdue one. You have to ask yourself, what were they doing? They didn't even recognize that we exist, that we have the right to exist.
Syrian President Assad, who met with President Bush before the war, has been seeking a major role in a post-war peace settlement.
I think Assad, as he has in the past, as being an opportunist, is attempting to get on board, is attempting to portray himself as more of a moderate.
The Golan Heights, which Israel captured from Syria in 1967, would be high on the agenda of any negotiations. But even the Israeli left is split over whether any of the high ground could safely be given back to Syria.
The two parties will have to compromise, they and us. The difference between war and peace is that at war you make decisions. If you want to achieve peace, you must be ready to make compromises.
I believe that Israel needs, for its security, even in a context of peace, to be in control, military control of the Golan Heights.
There's no doubt about what Israel's present leaders think. Any talk of land for peace is unacceptable to this right-wing government. So if Syria does come to the negotiating table, Israel will have some hard choices to make. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
The Soviet Union pressed its peace initiative today, announcing that Mikhail Gorbachev will host a new round of talks with Iraq next week at the Kremlin. Moscow correspondent Anthony Mason reports.
Returning from Baghdad tonight, Soviet Special Envoy Yevgeny Primakov said his meeting with Saddam Hussein had produced glimmers of hope, but he was careful not to give details.
You see, I don't want to jeopardize the process of negotiation for future.
One reason for Primakov's cautious optimism, Iraqi Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz has agreed to come to Moscow this weekend to continue talks with President Gorbachev. During their meeting yesterday, Hussein told Primakov he was ready to cooperate with Soviet peace initiatives, but he demanded an end to the Allied bombing and a resolution to the Palestinian question. While still insisting on Iraq's unconditional withdrawal from Kuwait, the Soviets are now hinting at the shape of a possible compromise.
Should Iraq decide to comply with the resolutions of the UN Security Council, we should all think possibly about some guarantees for Iraqi territorial integrity and independence.
The Soviets continue to express concern about the bombing of civilian targets in Iraq. Primakov said that last night 2 rockets landed only 100 yards from his Baghdad hotel, severely damaging this convention center.
It was not very pleasant for me.
And in what the Soviets are calling a convenient coincidence, the Kuwaiti foreign minister also arrived in Moscow tonight. He too will meet with President Gorbachev. The Kremlin, which has been eager to play the peacemaker in the Middle East, now has its chance. Suddenly, Moscow has become the center of the first serious diplomatic flurry since the war began. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Moscow.
Both Saddam Hussein and President Bush have said they welcome peace efforts, but so far, neither has shown any sign of budging on the main issue of Kuwait. Bill Plant got reaction in Washington to the Soviet peace bid. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Dan. The Bush administration clearly doubts that Baghdad is really ready to talk peace, but it insists that the efforts of Soviet envoy Primakov are welcome, just as long as he focuses on a complete, unconditional Iraqi withdrawal from Kuwait.
And as Secretary Baker said on Sunday, more power to them if they can get through to Saddam Hussein and he abides by the 12 United Nations resolutions.
For the record, Washington simply refuses to acknowledge that Moscow may be wavering in its support for the coalition effort, though the State Department did admit that supporting the Allied position was a difficult choice for the Soviets.
At the same time, the Soviet Union has voted for all 12 United Nations resolutions and has, as late as yesterday, said once again that those United Nations resolutions must be enforced.
But the UN, so useful to Washington since the crisis began, was a problem today, as some nations demanded an open Security Council debate on the question of whether the U.S. bombing has gone beyond the UN mandate.
It's appalling. It's outrageous. The victims were innocent people, women, children.
The U.S. tried to block this meeting altogether, but since it has the votes, will settle for taking the debate behind closed doors. It is one of the few private formal debates in UN history. A Pentagon team briefed UN Secretary General Perez de Cuellar today, trying to convince him that the coalition hasn't gone beyond the UN mandate. But the devastation of the bombing continues to spur peace efforts. Moscow will host the Iraqi foreign minister on Monday, and Washington officials keep thinking that the French will try to get back into the act. So Washington continues to insist that that's all just fine, just as long as Saddam leaves Kuwait. Dan?
Bill Plant, thanks. The U.S. Defense Department is denying that it has agreed to give Israel electronic recognition codes needed for Israeli warplanes to attack Iraq. Bill Plant reported last night that the U.S. government has decided to turn over the friend or foe codes to Israel, but only for use if or when the Allies launch a ground offensive. Israel has had no official comment. German police cordoned off the U.S. Embassy in Bonn tonight after the building was hit by apparent machine gun fire. There were no injuries. The self-described Red Army faction terrorist group claimed responsibility to protest the U.S. role in the Gulf War. Stay with us now for more news, including Ron Allen on a medical breakthrough that could save thousands of lives.
A few small towns in western Pennsylvania have produced more football legends than any other place. Dan Marino, Johnny Unitas, George Blanda. What is it about these towns that gives birth to such greatness? The very things that drive us at Ford. When leadership is in your blood, you push yourself to even greater heights. In fact, starting right now, you'll be seeing more new models and exciting innovations from Ford than you've seen in years. Ford Motor Company.
New Alpine Lace American Slices.
Tastes so good.
Low cholesterol and 50% less sodium.
Tastes so good.
2/3 less saturated fat.
Healthy and tasty American. Tastes so good. Alpine Lace.
What's different about Polident? Refreshing mint. There's a minty mouthwash ingredient in every tablet. Other cleansers may get dentures clean, but Polident gets the minty fresh clean. Super strength, super minty, Polident.
I was afraid to go to the doctor. I didn't want to hear that I might have an ulcer, but I just couldn't ignore my stomach. You can imagine how relieved I was when my doctor said Mylanta. He told me it wasn't an ulcer. It was indigestion. And indigestion like mine needed a strong medicine.
Mylanta is strong medicine, strongly recommended. In fact, Mylanta is the antacid doctors recommend most.
My doctor said Mylanta.
Chris, Vicky, Bud, Ron, and Hope. Teamwork. That's what works at News Channel 5. More news, more experience, more often.
There's word tonight of an experimental drug that could reduce the risk of fatal blood poisoning in surgery patients. Ron Allen tells us the drug could make all the difference for American soldiers wounded in the Gulf.
A new kind of drug may save the lives of some 50,000 patients who die each year from sepsis, massive bacterial infections that can follow surgery in a hospital, or trauma and wounds on the battlefield.
In spite of all the new antibiotics and in spite of all the advances in medicine, we still have people dying at a very significant rate from this disease, which we should be able to control.
But now there's a powerful new drug against sepsis called HA1A, according to an article in tomorrow's New England Journal of Medicine. It's an artificially manufactured antibody that fights infection in a new way. Here's how it works. When sepsis infection occurs, bacteria release deadly toxins into the bloodstream. HA1A is specifically designed to seek out and then destroy these toxins. In this study, the death rate of the sickest patients treated with HA1A dropped by 40%.
We believe that this drug will save lives. We feel helpless at the bedside when we see patients, especially young and otherwise salvageable patients, dying of this disease.
Doctors felt so helpless to treat sepsis that even while HA1A was being tested, It was rushed to help 2.5-year-old Stephen Selfridge of Pennsylvania. Last fall, a pack of Rottweilers mauled him. His doctors say without the drug, Stephen would have died. And the U.S. military is so confident about HA1A, it's been sent to field hospitals in Saudi Arabia to be on hand to treat infected combat wounds, even though the drug still hasn't been approved by the FDA.
But we want to make sure that our troops have the best available medicine that there is.
Once approved, doctors plan to administer the drug in combination with antibiotics. And they caution, despite these promising findings, HA1A is not a panacea.
It clearly helped, but it is not the final answer.
But it is the first time this kind of drug has shown promise in tests with human patients. Doctors hope these antibodies can also be used to treat diseases ranging from cancer to AIDS. Ron Allen, CBS News, Washington.
The Oscar nominations were announced today. Leading the way, Dances with Wolves, named in 12 categories, including Best Picture. Also up for Best Picture, The Godfather Part 3, Awakenings, Goodfellas, and Ghost. Oscar night is March 25th.
Recognize that skyline? There's only one place in the world looks like that. Manhattan. Where the air's clean, the living's easy, and the food's great. Every time I'm in Manhattan, I order my personal favorite, the New York Strip. Delicious. Manhattan's known for its famous restaurants, so be sure to try all three. Beef, real food, Manhattan, Montana.
A cold always starts small. A stuffy nose, a little sneeze. But before you know it, your cold is full grown. Achoo! That's when you need Dimetap, the grown-up medicine. If it was any stronger, you'd need a prescription. Maximum strength Dimetap Extend tabs work for 12 full hours. It's the way to relieve the congestion and sneezing of a full-grown cold. Dimetap, relief for the full-grown cold.
What do professionals do when they get a clogged sink, a stopped-up shower, a backed-up tub? They just pour in the power. The professional power of professional strength liquid Drano with 3 active ingredients, the power it takes to clear really tough clogs. Professionals use the professional liquid, and now you can too. Pour in the power. Professional strength liquid Drano.
Understanding our health may not always be a priority, but HealthBee can provide some insight and maybe a little preventative medicine. Tonight at 6 on News Channel 5.
4 weeks ago tonight, a spokesman for President Bush said, and I quote, "The liberation of Kuwait has begun." Many thought it would take just a couple of days or maybe weeks. President Bush tried to discourage that kind of optimism, and in fact, after 4 weeks, Allied forces are still trying to complete the opening phase of their battle plan. Eric Ingberg reports on the progress of the war.
1 month of war, and America's force in the Gulf is more confident than ever in its weapons and its skills, both honed while Iraq hunkered down. For a nation that has known mostly peace over 2 decades, it was a month for firsts.
We are the first Patriot battery in the history of the world to knock down a Scud missile.
It was the first time that a Marine attack helicopter has ever engaged and destroyed enemy tanks, and we got 4 of them.
It was basically us. We were the first 2 to go into the area to look around for the downed pilot.
There was reason 1 month ago to fret over whether the many complicated new weapons would work. Mostly they did. New rocket launchers, the stealth bomber, passed early tests. The human tests and human costs of fighting a high-tech war also came into focus. Lieutenant Commander Michael Spiker, who was the first pilot to take off from the decks of the carrier Saratoga in the war, was the first who did not come back.
The first concern is that we lost a hell of a good pilot. Tragic for me. On the borderline of tears.
Weapons of tremendous firepower are being employed. Iraq claimed hundreds of civilians died early today in a bomb attack on Baghdad. The speed with which modern war unfolds adds to the potential for terrible carnage. Among the first battlefield deaths were 7 Marines killed by friendly fire. The capture of an American woman soldier in the first land battle brought home the likelihood it will be a war of equal opportunity tragedy. The ruthlessness of a foe who poisoned the Gulf, who moved POWs to possible bomb targets, fed a conviction among the troops that this was the right war at the right time.
There is a thought in the back of my mind that there's a good cause behind it. It's definitely good versus evil, and that we are in some way paving the road for peace, hopefully somewhere down the road.
1 month since the shooting began, a lifetime for some. Army medic Gary Odom could hug his newborn son only with his eyes.
He looks like me.
It is one measure of what war costs families. 14,000 Desert Storm troops have become fathers and have yet to see their newborn children. Eric Engberg, CBS News, Saudi Arabia.
The search continues for 4 of our own, 4 missing CBS newsmen, but still nothing new to report. Correspondent Bob Simon, producer Peter Bluff, cameraman Roberto Alvarez, and soundman Juan Caldera disappeared January 21st near the Kuwaiti border. President Bush came out today with a 5-year, $105 billion plan for rebuilding the nation's aging highways and mass transit. Among the highlights, using private business to do the work, hiking tolls and other fees to help pay for it, taking away from Congress and giving to the states more say over how the money is spent. Congress is expected to put this bill in the slow lane and make many changes. We'll have more in a moment.
If you're counting calories, here's something you should know. An entire Kellogg's Special K breakfast, including cereal, fruit, skim milk, and coffee, actually has fewer calories than the leading diet shake. Fewer calories. And when you're dieting, isn't that what's important? Kellogg's Special K. Lose the fat.
Introducing a new idea in air freshening, Glade Country Pottery.
Put out the pottery, put it here, put it there.
Simple, handmade pieces of glazed pottery.
Put it everywhere, put out the pottery. Put the fresh country air anywhere.
The porous clay releases the light, fresh scent for 30 days.
Just put out the pottery, put the fresh country air everywhere.
Put out the pottery, new Glade Country Pottery.
We're about to prove a point. On the right, a pie wrapped in saran wrap. On the left, Reynolds and Glad. Knowing a bear won't eat what he can't smell, which one holds an odor and freshness better? Saran wrap. Nothing protects food better.
What a feeling, feeling fresh.
Introducing Fix-It-Nt Fresh with a crisp, clean feeling and a stronger hold than any other cream adhesive. A fresh new feeling and stronger hold are 2 new reasons to Fix-It-Nt and forget it.
This is CBS.
Good evening, I'm Vicki Yates.
And I'm Chris Clark. Coming up next on News Channel 5, 6 o'clock report, Governor McWhorter finally says the dreaded T word, but lawmakers will have the final say.
If the legislature makes the plan law, how much would it save or cost you? We'll add up what the average Tennessean family could pay. Plus, tonight's Health Beat helps you to take your health to heart.
Those stories, plus tonight's telepoll, ask you your opinion about the income tax.
And area students send Saudi soldier Valentines. News Channel 5 6 o'clock report is next.
Make this a Valentine's Day she'll remember all year long with roses, beautiful timeless roses from Kroger, America's largest florist. Tea roses, colorful sweetheart roses, or surprise her with dazzling mums, a stunning assortment, or any one of dozens of fresh-cut mixed bouquets. All at the floral shop at Kroger. See the difference. Go Krogering. What better Valentine's Day surprise than elegant long